Hey friends, we are deep into Modern Horizons 3 previews right now. In fact, most of the set has already been leaked, but we can't really talk about those here. However, we can be talking about the sweet commander cards that are coming with the main set. These commander cards aren't modern legal, so I'm going to be covering them over here on the Commander channel. However, if you want to read all these sweet new Modern Horizons cards that are modern legal in the main set, check out Seth's video over on the main channel, link in the video description below. Alright, so we just got our first peek at the new commander cards. We got 11 cards to look out, and we'll kick things off with the face commander of the Eldrazi precon. This is a 5-color colorless matters Eldrazi deck, which sounds like it doesn't make sense, but we're gonna go into it and it will make sense soon enough. So the face commander is Ulalek Fused Atrocity. Its casting cost is really weird. It's a hybrid of either Wooburg or colorless. So for each colored pip, you can either choose to pay the color associated to it or just colorless. So this is a 2/5 Eldrazi, it's a legendary creature, and it has Devoid, and this is the main gimmick that kind of makes this entire concept work. Devoid cards are cards that have no color. So yes, this is a 5-color card in terms of its casting cost, and usually that would mean it's a 5-color card. However, because it has the Void, it's actually colorless. And the vast majority of cards in the deck are also going to be the Void cards, so they should be a colored card, but they have the Void mechanic, so they actually count as colorless, and the rest of the cards are going to be caring about casting colorless spells and casting Eldrazi in particular. So Ulalek says, whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless mana. If you do, copy all spells you control, then copy all other activated and trigger abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. So Ulalek is basically Eldrazi Panharmonicon. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you get to pay 2 more mana, and if you do, you get to double it. And even better than that, if you had any activated or triggered abilities on the stack when you're casting the Eldrazi spell, then you get to copy those as well. So for example, if you cast Artisan of Kozilek, it has a cast trigger that says when you cast it, you get to reanimate something. Ulalek will copy both the Artisan of Kozilek, but also the cast trigger, so you get to reanimate a second thing. So it's a super Eldrazi Panharmonicon. However, you do have to continually pay more mana, and not just any type of mana, you have to pay specifically colorless mana, which is different from generic mana, right? Generic mana means you can spend your mana however you want, but colorless, you actually have to have colorless sources to generate that mana. Now, Ulalek has some competition for the de facto Eldrazi commander of choice. The other one that came out actually fairly recently in Commander Masters was Zuladok Void Gorger. Now Zuladok was very different. It is actually a true colorless deck. It has no Devoid mechanic, it's not 5-color, you can have 0 colored spells in your entire deck, you have to be full colorless. But the payoff is incredibly powerful. When you're casting a colorless spell, mana value 7 or greater, you get to cascade twice, which is incredibly strong. However, all things considered, Ulalek is just way better as an Eldrazi commander. First of all, you have access to all 5 colors, so you just have access to a higher concentration of Eldrazi to work with. Its ability is arguably stronger because Cascade is very powerful. However, with Zuladok, you might be cascading into like mana rocks. Like if you cascade into a Mind Stone after casting an Eldrazi Titan, you cast 2 mana rocks or something off your cascade triggers, you're going to feel really bad. Whereas Ulalek, you always know what value you're going to be getting, even though you have to spend additional mana on it. The other nice thing is that since you are 5-color and you're not colorless, you can actually run a bunch of very powerful support cards that Zuladok simply cannot. So the card pool that you're working with is simply way stronger. The card ability is way stronger. And yeah, I don't think it's much of a competition. If you want to go for Eldrazi and you're looking for the best Eldrazi commander, Ulalek is just far superior. Now, in terms of cool things to do with Ulalek, obviously casting Eldrazi Titans, any sort of Eldrazi is going to be really great with Ulalek. You're also going to be going ham with a lot of like the Void Matters Eldrazi. So like FIFA Existence just got printed. It has a really cool cast trigger. You get to double it up and double up on the body with Ulalek. Echoes of Eternity, why not? Panharmonicon 4 times instead of twice. That's super fun. And then you also have some instant speed shenanigans. Let's say, for example, you're attacking with an Eldrazi with an Annihilator trigger. The Annihilator trigger goes on the stack, and then you can cast Eldrazi spells at instant speed, and you can actually copy the Annihilator triggers along with the Eldrazi spell you just cast. So most Eldrazi's do not have flash inherently. However, there are a couple Eldrazi spells that you can cast at instant speed. One notable one that's actually in the deck is Crib Swap. It's a Kindred instant, and it has Changeling, so it's every creature type, including Eldrazi. So if you have a very powerful triggered ability like Annihilator on the stack on an Eldrazi you control, you can cast Crib Swap in response to it being on the stack. Ulalek will copy the Crib Swap because it is a Eldrazi, and then it also copies everything else on the stack too, so you get to double up on your Annihilator triggers. So yeah, Ulalek is very powerful, really cool build around, and it kind of opens the doors for 5-color Devoid Eldrazi, which has been an archetype before, but hasn't really had the support it needed to be really powerful. And Ulalek is going to be the precon that really makes the deck tick. All right, next up we have the secondary commander of the deck. This is Azlask, the Swelling Scourge. This is a 3-mana colorless 2/2 legendary creature Eldrazi. It says whenever it or another colorless creature you control dies, you get an experience counter, and then you can pay Wooburg. Creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is a number of experience counters you have. Scions and Spawns you control gain Indestructible and Annihilator 1 until end of turn. So I think Azlask is going to be very powerful in specific Eldrazi deck, but you really want to be focusing on Eldrazi Scion and Spawn tokens to get maximum value out of its activated ability. Giving all your stuff Annihilator 1 and swinging in is just going to often spell GG, as your opponents have to scoop up their entire board onto the graveyard. So the way I would build around it is I'd probably go for like Eldrazi, Scion / Spawn token generators, and with an emphasis on Aristocrats, because you want to load up on those sweet experience counters. So two standouts for a deck led by Azlask would be Pawn of Ulamog and Sifter of Skulls. They do pretty much the same thing. You want to be sacrificing your creatures, your non-token creatures, and then you get Eldrazi Spawn and Scions in response. And then other cards that passively generate these type of tokens like From Beyond are also going to be really powerful in the 99 of an Azlask deck. It's very different from Ulalek, which Ulalek you just want to be casting a bunch of Eldrazi, probably bigger spells than what Azlask want to be doing, and Azlask wants to be focusing on the Eldrazi tokens and on sacrificing matters. Next we have Hideous Taskmaster, the last card in the Eldrazi deck that we get to see today, and it is part of the 99. It's a 7-mana red 7/2 Devoid Eldrazi. And it says when you cast a spell for each opponent, gain control of up to one target creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain Trample, Haste, and Annihilator 1 until end of turn, and it itself has Trample, Haste, and Annihilator 1. So this is basically the Eldrazi version of Molten Primordial, a spell I've cast many times in my Commander career. And it's a card that I think I love way more than the average Commander player. I've always seen it as just a very powerful finisher. It's not quite Insurrection, but it gets the job done nonetheless. And Hideous Taskmaster fulfills the exact same role. It's a little bit stronger because the creatures that you're stealing with its ability have Annihilator 1 and Trample, so it makes the attack even more devastating. However, it is a cast trigger, so you can't get like some blink value out of it or whatever. You actually have to cast it from your hand, and that's it. So in decks that don't care about blinking or reanimating the creature, or cheating into play with like a sneak attack effect, then Hideous Taskmaster is simply stronger. And then obviously in an Eldrazi deck, it's going to be 10 times better. We move on to the Jeskai energy deck that is led by Satya Aetherflux Genius. This is a 4-mana Jeskai 3/5 legendary creature human artificer. It has Menace and Haste, and whenever it attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of up to one other target non-token creature you control. You get 2 energy. At the beginning of your next end step, sacrifice that token unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. So Satya leads the second energy Jeskai deck in a couple months. We recently got a Jeskai energy deck in the Fallout set, the first of its kind, that was led by Dr. Madison Lee, and its Lieutenant Liberty Prime recharged. So this is the second Jeskai energy deck in just the span of a few months. And how does it compare? What is the difference? Well, Satya doesn't specifically care about artifacts. Dr. Madison Lee and Liberty Prime, that deck was a energy artifact deck. This one is not specifically about artifacts, but if you look at the card pool of energy cards that we have to work with, energy and artifacts kind of go hand in hand. So if you are in an energy deck, chances are you already are forced into an artifact subtheme. That's just how it is. However, Satya doesn't need to focus on artifacts like the other two commanders do. And Satya is just a little bit different in terms of what it's doing as a commander. It wants to be attacking, so it wants to be aggressive. It wants to have some forms of evasion so it survives combat and stuff. And when it's attacking, you get to copy creatures, so you get to benefit from enter the battlefield triggers and all that good stuff, and it's generating energy that way. It's obviously very different from Liberty Prime, which also wants to be attacking, but it wants to be focusing on a Voltron strategy, or something like Dr. Madison Lee, which does not want to be attacking at all, just wants to passively have artifact spells being cast, and then utilizing the energy you're generating off her to have various cool utility abilities. Of the three, I think Satya probably has the highest potential of being the most powerful, just depending on what you're blinking with its ability, but they're all very distinct playstyles. In terms of what I expect the 99 to look like, obviously it's going to be a bunch of artifacts that generate energy, because most things that generate energy are artifacts. So like Electrostatic Pummeler and Robo Brain Warmind, these are two things that you'd love to be copying with Satya. And also we're going to be focusing primarily on creatures too, because Satya's ability allows us to copy creatures, not other permanent types. So copying things that generate energy on ETB are probably going to be your best bet. And also you can copy things that aren't artifacts too. So like Aetherstorm Rock doesn't really fit well in the Jeskai artifact deck. But in this version doesn't have a focus on artifacts. It works a lot better here. So yeah, Satya is a little bit different. It's focusing on ETB, maybe on sacrificing creatures, not necessarily about artifacts, even though there are going to be a lot of artifacts in the deck. The secondary commander is Kaith, Famed Mechanist, also 4 mana Jeskai 3/3 legendary creature Dwarf Artificer, and it has Fabricate 1. So when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it, or create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, and other non-token creatures you control have Fabricate 1, and you can pay 2, tap it, choose 1, populate, or proliferate. Now this one can be an energy commander too, because you can tap it, pay 2 mana, and proliferate, so you can proliferate your energy counters, but that's a pretty weak way of building an energy commander in my opinion, at least putting it in the command zone. This to me just reads as a very typical go wide tokens artifact deck, right? You want to be playing a bunch of creatures, and then Kaith is going to be very mana efficiently just generating a bunch of extra artifact creature tokens as you're casting your creatures. That's really good, really powerful, but like as an energy commander, it seems kind of bizarre that this is the secondary commander in this deck. The last new card from the deck is Aether Refinery. This is a 6 mana red artifact that says if you would get 1 or more energy, you get twice that many energy instead. And you can tap it, you get 1 energy, then you may pay 1 or more energy if you do create an XX black Aetherborn creature token, where X is the amount of energy paid this way. So this is kind of like Panharmonicon for generating energy. Whenever you make energy, you make twice that much energy, and it can immediately tap and make 2 energy. It says 1, but again, you have to double all the energy sources, so you actually make 2, and then you can make just like jump blockers or big game-ending threats, depending on how much energy you have to work with. Obviously, in an energy deck, this is going to be the exact type of effect you really want. It's also an artifact, so you're going to be benefiting from artifact synergies too, and like I said, all energy decks happen to run very strongly in terms of artifacts, at least for now, until we have a larger card pool to work with. So yeah, slam dunk in any energy deck, obviously. The next deck is for all the Jund modern boomers out there. Come to Commander, we can play your Tarmogoyfs here, and we can do that with Disa the Restless. This is a 5 mana Jund 5/6 legendary creature human scout, and it says whenever a Lurgoyf permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, put it onto the battlefield, and whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token. So for all you Gen Zers out there that have no idea what the heck a Tarmogoyf is, this is a 2-mana green creature. It's a Lurgoyf, and its power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to the number +1. And believe it or not, but back in the day, this card used to be very strong in Modern, and a lot of Jund players liked to bling out their decks with just the most expensive versions of all these type of cards, and a lot of them are rotting away in closets because they haven't been playable in Modern metas for a very, very long time. And I guess this is Wizards of the Coast's attempt to try and get those boomers to play Commander, because hey, Tarmogoyf, you could just use your actual creature card in place of the token if you really wanted to, if you wanted to bling it out that way. So this deck is Jund. It's all about self-mill. It's all about milling. In this case, Disa rewards self-milling, and it's all about Tarmogoyfs, or Lurgoyfs rather. Tarmogoyf is a type of Lurgoyf. So it's Lurgoyfs matters, Lurgoyf Kindred, and mill matters. And its effect is super powerful, right? Like, as you're self-milling, you get to reanimate all the Lurgoyfs. As you're doing that, anything that hits the graveyard goes directly onto the battlefield. And then for each opponent you're dealing combat damage to, you get to generate that many Tarmogoyf tokens. So if you have a 4-player free-for-all game, you have 3 opponents. If you manage to hit each opponent in a single combat, that's 3 Tarmogoyfs per combat, which is really powerful. Like, these creatures can get big. So what do I expect the 99 to look like? Obviously, the best cards for milling are going to be fantastic here, especially self-milling. The single best card in terms of just self-milling very, very efficiently is usually Mesmeric Orb. It's just amazing at doing that specific thing. Another cool thing you can be doing is you could make sure that all your creatures in your deck are actually Lurgoyfs by running Conspiracy. So you just choose Lurgoyf, and then all the creatures are going to be Lurgoyfs. All of them are going to be reanimated with Disa. It's really cool. And then if you want to just put all your Lurgoyfs directly onto the battlefield from your library, you can just cast Morality Shift. You'll just exchange your graveyard with your library. So suddenly all the Lurgoyfs are going to be onto the battlefield, and sure, your library is going to be probably kind of small afterwards, but you're probably just going to win the game soon afterwards anyway. So yeah, the commander is very powerful, very cool. I'm excited for all those Jund Modern players to try it out and get into Commander. The secondary commander for the deck is Koram the Undertaker. This is a 4-mana Jund 0/5 legendary creature human warrior. Koram gets +X/O, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in all graveyards, and whenever Koram attacks, each player mills a card, and during each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that were put there from libraries this turn. And just keep in mind, for that last ability, you can play lands and cast spells from other people's graveyards too, not just your own, so it can actually be a cheeky sort of theft ability, and it makes it a very consistent source of card advantage, because if you're whiffing on lands and playable spells, well, probably one of your opponents is going to be hitting a land and having a spell that you want to be casting from there. So Koram is pretty sweet. It's card advantage, it's also a mill generator, and also it's probably going to be a really powerful Voltron-y style commander too, because its power is going to be huge. So again, ways of triggering Koram more efficiently. We want to have more ways of self-milling or milling the entire table in this particular instance. So Mesmeric Orb is going to be fantastic. Out of the Tombs is another option for self-mill. And then we want to also have creatures in our graveyard that have incredibly high power. So one of the best ones with the highest baseline power is Yargle and Multani. It's going to be 18 power in the graveyard. So if you mill that, if it's in the graveyard for whatever reason, then Koram is now an 18/5 creature, which is bananas. And then you can utilize just Koram's huge power by running cards like Chandra's Ignition, which will just destroy all your opponents, which is super fun. So yeah, Karam's really, really good. It's card advantage, it's a mill engine, and also it will be huge very, very easily. So those are all really good things for a 4-drop. The last new card in the deck is Bloodbraid Challenger. Yes, the Bloodbraid Elf now has a commander version. It's a 5-mana Gruul, 4/3 creature, Elf Berserker. It has Cascade and Haste. But this one also has Escape. You can pay 5 mana, exile 3 other cards from your graveyard to cast it from the graveyard with its escape cost. So yeah, in a graveyard deck, this is very easy value. 5 mana, Cascades, 4/3, straight from the graveyard onto the battlefield, start smashing, start generating card advantage, all good stuff. Kind of sad that you can't actually play this in Modern, but whatever. And the final deck is a new Simic deck led by Omo, Queen of Suva. This is a 3-mana Simic 1/5 legendary creature shapeshifter noble. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, put an everything counter on each of up to 1 target land and up to 1 target creature. Each land with an everything counter on it is every land type in addition to its other types, and each non-land creature with an everything counter on it is every creature type. So this is an interesting ability. I really, really love the everything counter. I think it's super, super sweet, and I got really excited about brewing around it. Almost a way of putting everything counters is very mana efficient, by the way. For 3 mana, you immediately put an everything counter on 2 permanents, 1 land and 1 creature. That's really nice, and then it's very blinkable. It can attack. I mean, obviously you probably want to give it evasion if you're attacking, but it's very blinkable. That seems all well and good. The only downside with this card that I only noticed a little bit afterwards was that when almost not on the battlefield, the everything counters do not have these abilities. Oma needs to be on the battlefield for everything counters to give the land every land type or the creature every creature type. So that kind of sucks because if Omo's off the battlefield, then your everything counters do nothing, but at the very least, it's very mana efficient at what it's doing, so having some sort of downside is probably fair. Now, what cool things do I expect to do with Omo? Well, this is a land deck. This is a Simic land deck, so the cool things are going to be focused primarily on the lands, and the most notable lands to point out are stuff like Cloudpost. Cloudpost lets you tap for 1 mana for each locust in play, which is a unique land type. So if you start putting everything counters on all your lands, then your Cloudpost is going to tap for a silly amounts of mana. Same thing with the Urza lands. So Urza's Tower, for example, if you have an everything counter on one of your lands, then Urza's Tower will immediately tap for 3 mana because your everything counter means that it counts as a mine, a power plant, and a tower. So that's super fun. And then one cool little trick that was pointed out to me is Embiggen. If you animate a land with an everything counter on it, then it has every single land type, but it doesn't have every single creature type because that only applies to non-land creatures. So if you animate a land with an everything counter on it and you cast Embiggen, it's going to be enormous and just one-shot anybody. So that's super fun. Now, the secondary commander of the deck is just more typical Simic lands mattering. It's Jodi Mog Ancient. It's a 4-mana Simic 2/4 legendary creature elemental. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green forest dried land creature token for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. So the first time you cast it, you make 1, but if you cast it a second time, then you're going to make 2 when it enters the battlefield, and so on and so forth. And then at the beginning of each combat, land creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is Jodi's power. So just by itself, its baseline, it gives everything +2/+2. Your land creatures +2/+2. But if you pump up Jodi's power, then the pump effect will be even better. Now, obviously, what you're going to be doing with this deck is you're going to be going for land creatures matters. And this is somewhat unique. Like, we've had previous commanders that care about land creatures like Jolriel and Tatyova, but I think Jodi is going to be the absolute best one for going like just mass animating all your lands and trying to attack with them because its Anthem effect is so powerful. And the other thing that's really cool is it kind of pays for its own commander tax if you aren't being board wiped, at least. Like if Jodi dies to a Swords of Plowshares, well, it made a forest dried land creature, which can help pay the mana cost for recasting Jodi again. And the more times you have to cast Jody, the more forest drides you're making each time too, so that's kind of cool. So anything that deals with animating lands, like Sylvan Awakening is probably going to be the best card in the entire deck. Is going to be fantastic with Jody. Anything that, also supports animated lands too, like Joriel and Tetyova. Tetyova gives your land creatures flying. All that stuff is going to be really, really good with Jody. It's going to be a really powerful deck, and there's a lot of support in Simic for this style of play. All right, and that's all the 11 cards that we've got previewed so far for Modern Horizons 3 Commander Precons. As we get more of them, I will be releasing more videos, so be sure to like and subscribe and check the channel soon for more of those. And until next time, friends, see ya!